Welcome everyone to the February T5 training. This is the Texas PACE Authority's monthly training webinar. The focus today is using PACE with HUD and multifamily housing. And we have a number of guest speakers today. We'll introduce in just a moment. But for today's webinar, as an attendee, your audio is going to be muted and your video disabled. So please use the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. You'll see the chat there as well, but we'll track the Q&A throughout the presentation, the webinar today, and make sure that those questions get answered by the end of the webinar. If we run out of time, we'll make sure that those get answered afterwards. All of the attendees today, you'll receive a copy of the slide deck, and in that slide deck will be embedded links. So if you see things today and you want to click on them to find out more later, you'll get a slide deck and it'll have that information connected. Also, the webinar today is going to be recorded and will be available on TPA's website and our YouTube channel. So look for it there as a resource for colleagues that may not have been able to join live today. So today our agenda, really three main items after we do presenter introductions. We're going to hear first about the opportunity of using PACE and how it matches up so well with HUD and FHA multifamily properties and why PACE matters. Then we're going to move on to some of the PACE basics, how PACE works, and then the Texas requirements for PACE and HUD multifamily properties. Then we'll move into HUD guidance specifically and hear from HUD directly. We'll have an opportunity at the end for Q&A if we haven't addressed those questions that have come along during the webinar. And then we'll go over a number of resources that we'll provide you at the end. So with that, let's introduce our speakers, our presenters today. We have three presenters. The Honorable Robert Dye, who's the former mayor of Farmers Branch, Texas, serving 2 terms there. He's an experienced developer and has a great perspective on utilization of PACE with multifamily. Charlene Heidinger, who many of you know, the president of Texas PACE Authority, who's been with the PACE effort in Texas since its first introduction over a decade ago and implementation ever since. And then we have Bob Iber, who's a senior advisor of multifamily housing programs for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so with that, we'll move into the first section of the agenda, opportunity to use PACE financing on HUD and FHA properties. And Mayor Dye, I'll turn this over to you.
Thanks, Dub. Appreciate the introduction and you kind of leading this webinar. To Charlene, thanks for your efforts in putting this together, what you've done at the state and throughout so many different municipalities throughout the state of Texas. And Bob, just what you mean to HUD and to the lending and borrowing community here and for championing some of these causes. Excited to hear and learn even more myself later this afternoon and on this webinar as we move forward. But as mentioned, Robert Dye, currently a real estate developer focused in industrial and the multifamily sector. Additionally, I was the mayor of the city of Farmers Branch here in Dallas County. And as noted during my administration, it was important to me and to the team that we focused on sustainability and doing so in what we thought was the right way for our entire community, both the businesses and the residents, to make sure that we opened up as many possibilities as possible for people to use. And one of the initiatives that we did undertake was enacting legislature and policy to allow for PACE financing. My understanding of its benefits, its ability to open up new capital sources to allow for people to make improvements, not only in their facilities, but in ground up developments as well, is something that I thought everyone needed to have at their disposal, so did city staff. And so, we enacted that, put that in place, and it's something that our city is able to use in their toolbox to help anyone who feels they might be able to take advantage of this opportunity. And as a developer of multifamily space and as a user of HUD loans, I was curious to know and have talked countless times and hours with Charlene on how PACE could be used in the HUD process and what availability we had. And she's done an amazing job and spent several years pushing this effort through to get an opinion letter that says this is possible. And so, I thought that, as we look to some of the challenges that we're seeing as interest rates are going up, as construction costs are increasing and developments just getting a little bit tighter these days, is PACE an opportunity that we have that could open up new pathways to improve, the capital stack of our deals, and something that we can use in the various types of developments that we're using, especially as it relates to HUD and the lending programs and opportunities that they have. And so, hearing that this is a possibility and there's different ways to use it, I think it's a great opportunity for us to all learn, something that we could benefit from. And I know that on the ground up development side, it's going to take some extra effort to get that to work, but with some of the under lending platforms through HUD, that's a more seamless and easy kind of avenue to make those work. And regardless, I think PACE is a mechanism that can be used on various HUD, deals. And where we are right now is a great start, and we have great momentum. And that's thanks to Charlene and Bob and all the efforts there. And, just excited to continue to learn and hear some of the discussion that follows today. So just want to say thanks for the time, and just excited for where we're at.
And thank you very, very much. So I'm going to speak very quickly because I really want to get to Bob and the HUD piece of this webinar. But for those of you who are in the HUD FHA world, let us explain PACE. And so here's our first acronym, Property Assessed Clean Energy. We may have the most acronym challenged webinar ever. So if you see an acronym you don't understand or you hear it, ask the question in the Q&A box or answer it for everybody else. We'd appreciate that. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. This is an innovative financing tool that takes advantage of a local government's ability to assess property in exchange for an economic development given to that property. So this is voluntary. To make it simple, examples of involuntary assessments would be a sewer assessment, a sidewalk assessment, a street assessment that makes that property more valuable, but the local government asks the owner to help reimburse the cost for that advantage, that economic advantage. Think of PACE as a one building PID, a one building public improvement district. It is going to get the benefit of these improvements or access to long-term financing to make these improvements. And in exchange, the local government places an assessment on the property for these improvements. And in Texas, the local government holds that assessment and enforces that assessment. PACE can be used in Texas for anything that makes the property more energy efficient or water efficient or creates power on site. We have what's called a local adoption model. A city or county can create this program, and it can be used in those areas. It can be used by commercial property owners, and that includes nonprofit, multifamily property owners with at least 5 units, and owners of industrial property, which includes ag. So the Texas PACE program has grown very quickly. Texas PACE Authority serves 83 local governments, reaching about 73% of our population. To put that in perspective, we only have 212 counties to go. But if you are in an area that is not on this map and you would like to access this program, just contact Texas PACE Authority. We'll be very happy to work with you. Local governments need economic development programs, are very open to this because this does not cost the local government a dime. They never touch the money. They don't have to create a bureaucracy to make this economic development program available, but it's a great extra tool in the tool belt. And where there is a property owner interested in using it, they are very interested in learning more about it. So Texas PACE Authority is a very small but mighty team. We have 68 combined years of government service, and we love doing this as a public service for our governments in Texas. The growth of this program has really been phenomenal. We have done 71 projects at the end of last year. We've done another 30 million in 3 projects already this year. 125 million of our almost 400 million total is in the multifamily sector. And you can see that last year, we closed, helped facilitate $172 million, which is basically all the previous years combined. So you're learning about PACE at a great time because we're proving the model. The model really is proven across the country and also in Texas. So I want to focus on the multifamily properties that we've been honored to be a part of. These are all office buildings being repurposed to multifamily properties. And the one in the middle, the Travis building, is historic. They're all, you can see that they're all beautiful old buildings that just don't make sense anymore as office buildings. And of course, this one on the right in Temple, Texas is going to work better with windows. But we are very excited to bring these properties back to their highest and best use. We also are excited in the case of a vacant building that's brought back to life. Not only does it go back on the tax rolls, but it is a source of permanent jobs. So this may be the highest and best use of the program, but taking these old, this is in this case, the Concord apartment, that picture is in Laredo. We're very excited to have this project along our border. And this old hotel is going to be wonderful apartments. And so it's really exciting to bring these projects back to life. I also wanted to highlight a couple other projects that we've done. We took an old, well, we helped facilitate the financing for an old border court hotel, which is now 317 studio apartments in East Austin. In Dallas, our first really big project was a block. It takes up an entire city block, an old 1910 mercantile warehouse, which is now two Marriott properties. It's so big they enter on different streets, high-end retail, loft apartments and first floor retail. So really neat things are being done with older properties. But we can also do PACE with new construction, and some rules were changed last year to make that easier. But where, in the case of this project in Rockport, we could step in and help with new housing post Hurricane Harvey. These are very meaningful projects. So we're excited to do this one in Rockport, and as you can see, some of the other new construction multifamily projects that are going that are underway around Texas using PACE financing. So how does this work? So a municipality or a county can create the program. A third-party administrator, Texas PACE Authority, a nonprofit, administers these, and we like to think of ourselves as quality control, making sure that the energy and water savings that are promised are delivered and in a way that makes the property owner cash flow positive. That black line down the middle of this page, across the middle of the page, that's a firewall. In Texas, the property owner has all the power, and the governmental role is limited to education and outreach and making sure that the projects qualify. But it's the owner that gets to select their lender, their contractor, their architect, their engineer, and to find the highest and best use of this program for their property. So PACE is a win-win-win across the board. It is a very low-risk lending tool, and because of the robust underwriting and technical requirements in Texas, it's very low risk for the local governments. And we have tried to create a marketplace opportunity to create jobs in the localities where these projects are happening. So how did TPA get to yes with HUD? So I wanted to just do a little bit of history, and Bob, you feel free to jump in. And I think you're going to talk about this a little bit more anyway, but HUD issued a notice in 2017. And it said, okay, if you want to use PACE for HUD properties, here's how you do it. And Section 2 listed all the HUD and FHA multifamily properties eligible. And Bob has already offered a great list of what those are, and we'll share that with everyone. Section 5 listed 5 requirements that a PACE administrator had to meet in order for HUD to feel comfortable working with that PACE program. And it took a while, but Texas PACE Authority met those 5 requirements. some directly, and some HUD was gracious enough to provide a workaround so that we could satisfy its needs. Then section 5, which is the one I really think we'll focus on quite a bit today, is now that we know you can use PACE in Texas, what are the 14 underwriting requirements that each project will have to meet? And the good news is that Texas PACE Authority's requirements are consistent with half of these with HUD. So either way, we're already got half of these done. And then finally, section 6 lays out HUD's approval process. There's more guidance on the approval process in the letter, the conditional letter that we received from HUD. And I have much to learn in this area as well. So the good news, my Christmas present in December was the letter from HUD, conditional approval letter. And we have been drinking from a fire hose, learning how these two programs can work, these two organizations can work together with all these different HUD multifamily properties. So the final thing I really want to share is that in order to figure out how this works, you have to read these two documents together. And that is, and that's the only way to get the full picture. So our approval comes with conditions. The main one was that we had to receive an Attorney General opinion. So we have a Texas Attorney General opinion confirming that PACE is a governmental assessment. It is not another loan. It does not require HUD to go second behind another private lender. That was the key, because legally HUD can't do that. The fact that this is a governmental assessment takes that issue off the table. The second thing is that the HUD guidance wanted the PACE assessment with the tax bill collected by the tax assessor collector. And that was something that just was not going to happen in Texas. And there are a few other states where the PACE lenders collect the installments directly. Now, the local government will collect a default installment. And because these assessments stay with the land, they cannot accelerate, right? So only the defaulted assessment can be collected, the installment, not the whole assessment, can be collected. But the workaround for are these not going on the tax bill is that the installments will be escrowed. So they also, in Texas, because they're not on the tax bill, we leave it to the lender and the owner to determine how often the PACE installments will be paid. And HUD said, we need them to be paid semi-annually or annually. And the vast majority of them are annual anyway. HUD insisted that the mortgagees, the senior lenders, and HUD and FHA have a 60-day notice of default and the right to cure, and that's baked into our documents anyway. Retroactive PACE, although it is allowed in Texas, is not permitted on HUD and FHA properties. And we've already talked about there's no acceleration of the assessment amount, and that's baked into the statute as well. We are going to have to work together and collaboratively to get these projects across the finish line. And for those on the call who want to wait and see how this works, that's fine. There will be a few that are going to go for this, and we can't wait to work through these first ones. But the first ones are not going to be for the faint of heart. But we are going to get them done, and we are going to lay a pathway to make this a common occurrence in Texas. And so, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you, and hopefully I've talked fast enough that you have the bulk of the time to share your expertise. And I really encourage everybody to please put your questions in the Q&A, start lining them up, and we will answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. Thanks to Dub for the introduction, and Mayor Dye for his preliminary remarks. Appreciate it all. As Charlene said, TPA is small and mighty, and I can tell you from working with Charlene over the last 2 years that they have demonstrated that. I would also add patient, because as folks on this call know, and I think there's a lot of multifamily owners and developers who do HUD work. There are FHA lenders and others HUD has a process for just about everything, and we put Charlene and team through that process, and they were very flexible and managed to get through it. So again, we appreciate their patience and working with us. So we thought it'd be a good idea. And again, we encourage questions. So please put those in the Q&A. I think Dub and Charlene, you'll be watching the questions because I'll probably be talking and not. So feel free to interject if you think it's a timely question to what I'm talking about or what's up on the screen. But I do think we'll have time at the end for getting to the questions as well. And as Dub said up front, if we don't get to any, I think we'll probably be able to respond either individually via email or in another format. So we thought it'd be a good idea up front to go through the FHA HUD programs that are eligible. As Charlene said, our basic guidance is in Housing Notice 2017-01, came out in January of 2017. And right up front, it lists the eligible programs. It's basically all the multifamily programs. So anybody that's familiar with HUD, it's all the mortgage insurance programs, it's the rental subsidy programs. Thing to keep in mind, though, it is just multifamily. PACE has not been approved for the FHA single family sphere or the healthcare part of HUD. So those FHA lenders out there or developers who do assisted living or nursing homes and use our Section 232 mortgage insurance program, that has not been approved for that. Again, just multifamily. So it's things like our refinance program, Section 223F and 223A7. 221D4 is our basic new construction program that's eligible for PACE. Those mortgage insurance programs are eligible. Section 202, affordable housing for the elderly. Section 811, that's affordable housing for the disabled. Section 8, as I mentioned, that's our basic rental subsidy program. And if HUD's the lender, if we hold the mortgage, could be 202, could be 811, could be another mortgage that has come our way. We can also pair PACE with those. I will mention that when we wrote the notice back in 2016, it is written with an eye towards adding PACE to a property with existing HUD financing or rental subsidy, or through a Section 223F refinance of an existing property. The reason was at that time, so again, 2015, 2016, we put the notice together, that was predominantly how PACE was being utilized in the multifamily sphere. Since that time, PACE, as Charlene noted, has been paired with new construction. So we are willing to look at and able to use, as it says on the slide, PACE with our new construction programs, 221D4 and 220 and 231. We have other new construction mortgage insurance programs. So we are willing to look at that. I saw in the chat, somebody did ask about, is it possible to pair PACE with our FHA new construction programs? The short answer is yes. But then also in the chat, the person had some questions about how exactly that would work. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but frankly, the devil's in the details. And we hope to see that deal and work through it. But again, that would be with the FHA MAP lender and talking to HUD staff and just seeing how the numbers work. Dub, if you could go to the next slide. And again, I see questions are coming in, but I'm not going to look at them. I'm going to rely on Charlene or Dub, or we'll get to them at the end because I want to present and not try to multitask. As my wife reminds me, I'm not good at multitasking, so I'm going to stick to presenting and going through my slides, but I think we'll get to all the questions. So with that, and Charlene talked about this as well, the first thing that has to be done is that PACE has to be approved for the locality. Good news is, as Charlene talked about, TPA has been approved. As you note, as her map noted, doesn't cover all of Texas, but most of the populous parts of Texas. And I would say, as she said, if you're thinking of a deal or you've got a property that's in one of those parts of Texas that TPA does not cover, get in touch with them. Because I think there may be a way for them to work, that's TPA, to work with that property and that locality to get there. But one of the precursor requirements is that the locality be approved. So for most of Texas, we're there. And if there's anybody on this webinar that wants to talk about other jurisdictions, happy to talk about those as well. We've got 4 others across the country that we've approved as well. Happy to talk to folks about those. The important part is treated like taxes. We got the Attorney General opinion letters, so we're not going to spend much time on that. And then the other things that she mentioned, collected with taxes, only the most recent assessment is due, so can't call it all due at once. And what's important to us is lender notification, because we want the lender and, if possible, HUD to have an opportunity to cure. Now, Charlene did mention our conditional approval and the workaround that we did. And what we came up with is that because the notice or the billing does not come from TPA or the state, we came up with a workaround that if the HUD FHA lender or MAP lender is willing to escrow 1 year's worth of the PACE payments or PACE assessment, that's sufficient for us, because frankly, what that allows is if anything goes wrong, somebody doesn't get the notice, whatever, the lender can rectify the issue with the funds they have in the escrow account. I've talked to a couple of our largest FHA MAP lenders about that, and without your details, because we didn't have a deal to present to them. But the general consensus was, well, yeah, we already escrow for real estate taxes and insurance. We'd as a lender would consider doing, and would probably escrow for the PACE payments as well. Not a heavy lift, probably do it. But that's the workaround, as Charlene mentioned, and that's one thing that to get there would be required, that the FHA lender would have to agree to escrow the PACE payments. Again, we don't think that'd be an issue, but it would be up to the individual lender. And she also mentioned the last bullet on there, the state attorney general opinion letter. We did get that. We've gotten that in from several other states. Sometimes, and we need to go back and forth with the attorney general's office just to get the language we're looking for. And we're happy to provide examples of other states' attorney general opinion letters that help other state attorneys general to issue that letter. Dub, I'm going to ask you to advance the slide. Thank you. And as I mentioned, and Charlene mentioned, 2017 lays out the process. No surprise, we at HUD have a fairly regimented process. And so there is in that section 5, Charlene mentioned 14 requirements. Not planning to go through every one of them. They are in the notice. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. At the end, my email address is going to be available, and it's in the deck that's going to be shared. So feel free to reach out with any questions and we'll get you an answer. I will say this, though, that we want to see owners of HUD multifamily properties have the opportunity to work with PACE. And so if one of our requirements or some of our requirements are an impediment or come up to be a problem, let me know. Let's talk about it. Let's see if there's something we can do to work around that. Some of them we might say, no, we're pretty hard and fast on that. And I'm going to talk about some of that in this slide and perhaps one of the other slides. But again, our goal is to make PACE available. We wouldn't have worked so hard with Texas or TPA to get there. And if there's something that's coming up, we want to know about it and see if we can change anything. First one is very simple. Owner has to be in compliance with their HUD business agreements. So for those from the HUD world that are on the phone, if it's an existing property, that's the mortgage and the regulatory agreement. The great news is the great majority of our properties are in compliance with their business agreements. But obviously, if we got somebody that's got an area of non-compliance, using HUD speak, I'll say like a failing REACT score. That's a real estate assessment center physical inspection. That would be an area of concern, but that's something we could look at. And usually folks who have those, and it's not many of our participants who get those, it's actually less than 4% of our participants get a failing REACT score. They always have a plan to address that. And we're usually teeing up a follow-up inspection to see if their plan has addressed all of that. So again, owner in compliance is important to us, but if there's an issue, it's maybe worth talking about. We do require an energy audit, and there's some specifications in the notice about what's required in that audit or the format. I will say, again, we wrote that almost 7 years ago now. If you got an audit, now it has to be a fairly current audit, but if you got an audit that's another format, let's talk about that too. Because again, the important thing is we get an energy audit, not necessarily have to be the, I think we say ASHRAE level 2 or whatever. But again, we're happy to talk about what that audit looks like, but we do need to see an audit. Savings to investment ratio of 1:1. Oh, go ahead, Charlene.
Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted you to know that the Texas statute requires an independent third-party energy audit at the beginning to make sure that the projected savings will exceed cost, and at the end to make sure it was properly installed and operating as intended. So the
my sense is that
pieces are things that we both programs require the bolded bullets.
Yeah, so I think that audit is probably going to be sufficient. Again, we'll probably want to just talk up front to make sure it is. We don't want folks to do 2 audits when they wouldn't need to. So and just get HUD on board with that audit and the format it is. But my sense is we'd be willing to accept that. I know we've talked about that a little, Charlene. Again, as I said, the devil's in the details. We haven't seen one yet, so we got to at least work through that. But that's a great point. So folks who are working through and applying for PACE through TPA are already going to have that audit. We do require a savings to investment ratio of 1:1. I don't think that's too far of a stretch. I will say if somebody gets close to that, that's worth talking about as well. But again, that's one that we think is important. We require the underwriting for the PACE financing to be based on 75% of the estimated savings from the energy improvements. The reason for that is we've got some experience in this area for, again, those of you from the HUD world, from our green retrofit program of a few years ago. And what we found when we administered that program is that for the majority of properties, they did not reach the 100% savings that they had estimated. And that's perfectly understandable when there's estimated savings and then the energy improvements are put in and then there's actual savings. So that's why we require the underwriting to be based on 75%. Again, if that's problematic, let's talk about it. But that's one that our experience has told us that is more realistic. So we hold to that, and that's why it's in our notice. HUD programmatic debt ratios apply. So this gets to, again, when I was perusing the chat questions before I came on, I think one of the questioners alluded to that. Remember I said we could do new construction, we could pair new construction with PACE financing, and certainly with existing properties and with through perhaps a 223F, which is our one of our refinance programs. But it's important to note that our programmatic debt ratios apply. We talk about in the notice those for 223F. They are different for some of our other programs, and the FHA lenders on this call, and if you were to talk to an FHA lender, would know all of those total debt ratios that we allow on properties. But it's important to note debt service coverage ratio, total debt on a property, statutory mortgage limits on the FHA debt on a property. Those will still apply. And I will say that's something we are not going to be changing or waiving. In some cases, it's statutory, and some cases it's good underwriting practice, and we don't vary those for our regular program borrowers, and we do a little over 1,000 loans a year, so across the country. And so it's important to note that those apply, and that from HUD's perspective, PACE cannot substitute for borrower equity on a new construction deal. So the borrower is still going to have to come up with whatever the equity pay-in is, and PACE cannot be used to substitute for that. So that's an important thing to note as well. Second to last bullet, the energy measures must be permanently affixed to the property. That's a standard one for us. Somebody might be able to come up with something of that could convince us of why something wasn't permanently affixed, and we can get comfortable with that. But at present, that's where we stand on that. Got to be permanently affixed. And the PACE repayment, so to the PACE lender, can't exceed the remaining useful life of those fixtures. Again, from HUD's perspective, we don't want the borrower paying on the cost of those after the useful life of whatever those fixtures are. So I don't know that that'd be a problem. I have not heard from any PACE lenders or PACE program officials if that's a problem, but that's another one we have in there. Dub, I'm going to ask you to move on.
Yep.
Charlene, sounds like you might have a question or
I was
comment.
just going to say, those last two bullets are in the Texas PACE Act itself.
There you go.
So there's no waiver of those anyway.
Yeah, and Charlene's heard this from me before, but when we put together Housing Notice 2017-01, again, back in 2016, issued in January 2017, we worked with 3 PACE authorities, including the state of Connecticut, which for those of you that know PACE, I think was either the first or one of the first, and at least at that time, and I think may still be considered the gold standard for PACE programs for our conditions, because when we put them out there, we wanted to make sure we weren't putting out something that was destined to fail. So again, we want to make sure that whatever we put in there, one met our underwriting criteria and our risk tolerance, but also was something that was aligned with what the PACE programs, or at least the 3 we checked with, and they were from different parts of the country, so we didn't just do Connecticut and the 2 adjoining states, but we checked with, and they said, no, this works, and we did make changes based on that. So again, these were some canned slides I had, so that's why there's a link to the 2017-01 notice in there. And I think Charlene's got it at the end of this presentation as well. And if anybody has trouble finding it, just email me and I can send you a link to the notice. But once you get to HUD's website, it actually is pretty good, and you can get to all of our documents, and it's got good information on our programs. And as Charlene mentioned in the beginning, I sent a link to her, which she's going to share, which describes those in more detail, those programs that I talked about in the beginning. So those of you that are not in the HUD world and not familiar with that, but want to know more about those programs, that you will get a link to HUD's webpage with more detail. And I encourage you to also talk to an FHA lender. Clearly, if you already are in the HUD world, you've got an FHA lender on your property. So it's important to, and we're going to talk about that, get your lender on board with adding PACE, or if it's a refinance, with using PACE as part of the capital stack for the refinance or on new construction. But if you're need to do new construction or find a lender, HUD has approved MAP lenders. I understand there's quite a few of them on this call. They've been through a process to be approved by HUD. And Charlene also has the link to our list of approved, as we call them, MAP lenders. Again, Charlene said you're going to be on acronym overload. MAP stands for Multifamily Accelerated Processing. So those are the multifamily FHA approved lenders, and you have to use an FHA approved lender to do any type of FHA financing on any of our properties. And one of the prerequisites for and it's on this slide as well, for our review, is that the lender has approved the adding of PACE financing to either the existing property or a new construction. Because clearly, if the lender's not on board, then we're not going to spend time reviewing. So it's important to know the FHA lender, be in touch with them early, have conversation with them. We certainly can also participate in calls with the lender and borrower or prospective borrower. So on this slide, we say in the first bullet, PACE proposal must be far enough along to submit FHA lender consent. So important. So look at 2017-01. I think that was section 5 we talked about with the 14 conditions. As Charlene said, half of those are TPA conditions anyway. The other ones are probably very HUD specific. So check those out and make sure that from a borrower perspective, you feel comfortable that you can meet those, that the PACE financing, and because TPA is already there, I think that probably gets close to meeting all our requirements. And then talk to your lender and get them comfortable with that. You've got to submit something to them, because one of our requirements is lender approval. That's one of the 14. And so the lender review, because the reason we have this here is that we've had questions about submitting the review for the lender to HUD at the same time. And again, our perspective is do the lender up front, because if the lender can't get there and you can't approve the lender can't approve that, then you're going to not get HUD approval. Hold on a moment. And I'm back. So the HUD submission requirements. Sorry, those are my dogs. So the HUD submission requirements. This is what you get when you work from home. Everybody's supposed to, hey, sorry, I'm back. And so we went through some of the HUD submission requirements. They're all in the notice. We think they're pretty straightforward, but again, if there's any problems, you talk to us or talk to me, and we'll see if we can work things out. Some of those things we're going to say, nope, we got to see the 75% underwritten on the PACE financing. 1-to-1 savings to investment ratio, we might be sticking to that, but again, it's worth reaching out to us and talking about it. Time frame, we generally say give us 30 days. That means we get a complete package up front. No surprise, I got more than one dog. So we've got to see a complete package, lender approval. So if, and again, that's part of the complete package. So if the FHA lender hasn't approved that up front, it's not a complete package. And so we've got to either send it back or say one more time. And so the point with all of that is that it takes more than 30 days if we have an incomplete package, or we've got to go back and forth on submission requirements. The reviews will predominantly be done in our Fort Worth office. Bryce Klein is on this call as well. Bryce is our point person in Fort Worth on PACE. Bryce does a lot of other things as well, so it's important to remember that. But keep in touch with Bryce if anything comes up, and you can always reach out to me and talk to me as well. So sorry about that. Got the dog still going on. And so again, reach out to Bryce. His email address is going to be on one of these slides as well if you have any questions about a particular package. But before that, I would say if you have any general questions, please reach out to me, and either through email or we'll jump on a call. We'll get those answered. Dub, can you go to the next slide? So just a couple of things I wanted to throw in. We're almost near wrapping up so we can get to folks' questions. I see there's a lot of comments and questions in the Q&A. We're still working with several localities for approving their PACE program, such as we've done with TPA. I can tell you the other ones we've already approved are Connecticut, Maryland, District of Columbia, and parts of California. Much like TPA, California doesn't have one administrator, so we've approved parts of California. If an issue comes up, as you heard from Charlene, we're willing to work with localities. So we did do a workaround for TPA in Texas, and we would be willing to do that for others as well. So encourage the any of the localities, if they're having issues, to reach out to me and talk to us. Again, we may be able to get to a workaround. Don't know if there's a workaround for the Attorney General opinion letter, but again, it may be something we can get something from the owner or owner's counsel, or might be able to work with that as well. But we do really need to hear from the Attorney General. As we talked about, one can combine PACE with FHA new construction, even though the notice doesn't talk about that. We are willing to do that. We're willing to look at that. We have not done that to date. We have not had anyone submit that to us. One of the comments I read was that after reviewing all and running all the numbers and looking at HUD's green MIP and other incentives that we give through our 221D4 program, that perhaps the PACE financing just doesn't work with a particular deal, and we understand that. But there may be an opportunity for us to fit PACE with new construction, and we welcome that deal, and we're welcome to work with folks on that. As Charlene mentioned, even though Texas has retroactive PACE financing, HUD will not allow retroactive PACE financing. And so for those of you not steeped in how PACE works, there is in some jurisdictions, not all, the ability to have the energy improvement financed by another source. So in our case, it would be the FHA 221D4 mortgage, and then get the PACE financing behind that to pay the borrower for that. Our perspective is that just puts too much risk on HUD and the FHA first lien holder for energy improvements that have already been paid for by the FHA first lien or other funding sources. So we will not consider retroactive PACE financing. We want to get that up front because it doesn't talk about that in the notice. At that time, folks weren't doing retroactive PACE financing. I just have to say that we will look at, and I talked about it, value and debt service coverage ratio. Those are important for us. The FHA lenders know that and know the ratios that we look for, but that is something we will review closely. And as I mentioned, PACE does not substitute for borrower equity requirements, and we don't change those. So keep that in mind. I know folks are always looking for, and nothing wrong with that. This is America. How can a owner or borrower put the least amount of their capital in and get the highest mortgage return? But we don't allow PACE to substitute for borrower equity. Dub, I'm thinking that might be my last slide. Yeah,
it is. So we're going to go.
Charlene, do you want me to start running through the questions, or do you want to point them out to me? I can look at them now.
It'd be great for you to run through them. I'm just going to show everybody that when they get these slides in a follow-up email, they will have our contact information, and they will also have links to as much of the resources as they could possibly want.
There's a lot of resources. So I'm just going to start going through questions since we got 11 minutes, but folks, please keep raising questions. And Charlene, please go in. I'm just going in the order. Can you layer PACE with HUD financing? Does it have to? No, HUD is an option for financing, but PACE can be layered with conventional financing as well, private activity, private placement. I don't want to speak for Charlene on that, but the point of this is to let folks know that layering or combining PACE with HUD is an option now, but that doesn't mean that you can't use other forms of financing in lieu of FHA. So keep that in mind. Time frame, we talked about that. 30 days is a round number, and Charlene will know if she ever heard 30 days from us, she would say, boy, they didn't meet that by a long shot. But our goal is to get you something pretty quick when we have a complete package. How does HUD underwrite CPACE into stabilized debt service coverage as it is accretive to economics? I'm going to have to defer that to one of my FHA lenders. PACE is 25 to 30 years, sizes to 1.20, HUD can be longer. That is correct. So our refinance programs are 35 years. So again, I said it couldn't exceed it. So we're fine there. Our new construction program is typically 40 years. So should be fine. Sorry, that's one of my dogs in the background. Still reading away. How about subordinate debt from public to private? We do have very stringent rules on subordinate debt, yes. And so that was one of the things that we hold to. So look out for that. But we have already determined that PACE can be applied with FHA. So we don't have to worry about our subordinate debt requirements getting in the way there. We do allow PACE, and PACE is it's considered part of the capital stack. But remember, when we underwrite it, it's put in the real estate taxes line item. Again, I'm just going through these and talking. Charlene, feel free to jump in if there's can pays be used for new construction, renovation, refinance. Yes, that's from Teresa Smith. Can you elaborate on why there's a limitation on retroactive financing? I just talked about that, but again, our feeling is if the FHA loan already paid for those improvements, then we're not going to allow the borrower then to put PACE financing behind that. And so there will be no allowance for retroactive. Question for Bob. This is from Mike Bazant. Oh, hi, Mike. Hope to see you in Baltimore in a couple of weeks at ELA. Policy requires that this amount of PACE financing be included in the applicable loan to value threshold criterion 3. I think that's right, Mike. If might have you write me though, and I will check with my production folks to make sure I'm spot on with that. But I think you're right in there. Similarly, is the combined debt service coverage one on the HUD insured mortgage and PACE still required? Yes. To your second to last question, we have found that these thresholds have been the main challenge, and I agree. We think that probably would be, and we do hold to the ratios though. Where do you find a listing of multifamily and FHA listing? Wait a minute, I scrolled. That's from Rashmi. So I'm not sure exactly what Rashmi's asking. If you want to know about FHA properties, that's actually on HUD's website. And if somebody wants that, we can send you a link. Charlene's got a list of HUD's programs. She's going to send that out. And it's also, she's going to send out a list of the FHA map lenders. So between those three, Rashmi, I hope we got your question. Dennis Roberts, do some HUD housing residents pay some or all of utility costs? It depends. So it depends upon the building, Dennis. In some cases, many of our properties are market rate. So it just depends about how it's set up, but most folks pay utilities as part of their regular rent. We do have subsidized properties where the residents actually get a utility allowance and then the utilities paid for that. So the short answer is it depends, but you raise a good point about the split incentive efficiency. So Dennis, you're spot on with that, especially with our subsidized properties. Bruce Minchie, good to see your name, Bruce. I think that's you. Seems the biggest challenge PACE does not increase the maximum mortgage allowed by HUD. And you are correct, Bruce. Is more expensive. Source of funding. You are correct, Bruce, that because we I think, as you know, Bruce, those are statutory limits. We have no authority to change those. And so you're correct that because we can't increase that maximum mortgage, there might not be a way to fit PACE in there. Karen, nice to hear from Karen. Do we add line item for PACE expense under taxes? That's correct. Hopefully that answers that question. John, how many months of payments must be escrowed? One year, 12 months. Oh, Charlene said she'd like to answer that live. Did I get it right, Charlene?
Oh, I hit the wrong button. I was going to try and save you time by typing in.
You're going to type it in. Yeah, one year. What other states? I answered that. Connecticut, Maryland, DC, and California. Brad McMurray, if doing a reconstruction of development using FHA, it always messes with me when somebody else adds another one, and then it goes down. That will include energy efficient and water saving measures. Water we're okay with. What is the benefit of utilizing PACE versus increasing HUD's 224 loan to implement those green measures? If you can increase HUD's loan, and depending upon what criterion you came under, and there may be an ability to increase the loan. I hear what you're saying, Brad, that again, if you can cover it under the FHA loan at the same interest rate that you got that FHA loan, I see the point of your question. And that may be why, to your point and Bruce's point, why, and Mike Bazantz's point, why we're not seeing a lot of folks trying to pair with new construction. Kimberly, with new construction projects and ASHRAE won't be available. However, they can do SETI. Kimberly's right. Can you explain if they will be okay for new construction? It's going to be a challenge how to figure it out for new construction, and we haven't seen that yet. But because we're willing to pair PACE with new construction, and Dub says we can answer this question live. That's Kimberly Tainton. Should I turn it over to Dub on that? But yes, we think that it can be worked out to show what the projected cost savings are, and then we'd work on that. But Dub, I'll turn that over to you.
Right, that's what we do for new construction is projected savings. Essentially, it has to be above minimum code requirements, so higher performance standards than what would otherwise be required by local codes.
Yep, so I concur with that too. So Dub's spot on. Steve asked, does the statutory debt limit include the PACE debt amount? So HUD allows a total amount of debt on a property, and so PACE is included in debt. And so that may then prohibit PACE if the total amount of debt is exceeded. And then we have statutory mortgage limits on how much mortgage HUD can give. So those are actually two different concepts. FHA lender can talk to you about those, but again, hopefully I got that for you and you understood. Steve. Anonymous attendee, Bob, would you please elaborate on what you mean about PACE not substituting for equity? I thought that was pretty simple, but let me see what it says. If PACE is in the capital stack, wouldn't it be replacing equity? It depends, because we allow for total debt, and under HUD programs, we have a total amount of debt we allow, and the rest is equity. And so the borrower equity is whatever that amount is. And so PACE can't be used to substitute for borrower equity. Hopefully that makes sense. But if not, anonymous attendee, email me or we can set up something to talk later. Next one, how will debt service coverage be calculated on 223F? Will include the debt service for the PACE payment. Yes, debt service coverage should include that. Talk to a lender, FHA lender about those requirements, but you can always email me. Robert Matler asks, how or would HUD consider appliances permanent fixtures? Yes, as tenants don't take them when they leave. Yes, we would include, and Charlene wants to talk about that one.
Texas PACE Authority will not. They have to be permanently affixed to the property. And the idea is that they're there the whole time for the savings, but we have not considered dishwashers, washing machines, microwaves, etc., to qualify for PACE in Texas.
There's your answer. And ours also requires permanent affixing. So I think we're kind of aligned there. So sorry, I might have gone astray on that. PACE can't substitute for equity, but what is the minimum equity required as a percentage of cost? So that depends upon the mortgage insurance program. Again, any FHA lender can answer that, or feel free to reach out to me. The investor owns the HUD facilities, applies for a PACE loan through a PACE lender to make improvements to the HUD-owned facility, to the owned HUD facility, and repays the PACE lender. That's correct. So the funds go back to the PACE lender. That's correct. Arnaldo. Anonymous. Would HUD allow an early start construction to add minimum improvement needed for PACE? Talk to us about early start. We do allow early start, but we make you jump through a whole lot of hoops. Sounds like somebody who knows the HUD world, but we make you jump through a whole lot of hoops. So talk to us early about that. I won't say yes or no. We just need to talk about it. I mentioned the other jurisdictions. Matthew McCormick, to clarify, do they treat CPACE payments as tax payments above the line? Tax payments. Is there a list of HUD approved PACE lenders? HUD doesn't approve PACE lenders. And I mentioned the states.
On the Texas PACE Authority website, under resources, we have a service provider directory, and there is a non-exclusive list of PACE lenders that are ready to go today. But it's non-exclusive, and we're very happy to work with the lenders of the borrower's choice. And
thanks, Charlene. I'm going to try and go quickly because we're at time. Will an updated mortgage e-letter be published? No. How does, because I'd have to write it. How do you anticipate PACE working to make up the capital stack if it's debt service constrained? I don't understand that, but right, if it's debt service constrained, then the short answer is it probably wouldn't fit. That's anonymous attendee. Oh no, this is next anonymous attendee. Connecticut, Maryland, DC, and parts of California are already HUD approved. Other states in process, there's a few. We hear from Wisconsin, Illinois, Oregon, parts of Virginia, but it's all on them. We don't have anything to process. Would you put the links in the site again? Charlene's gonna send that all out. Fannie Mae has lower interest loans, qualifying green loans. Can't speak for Fannie Mae Nelson. Texas a pilot? I don't know. Is Texas a pilot? It's not for us. Texas is approved. We don't consider it a pilot. TPA is approved. Show the resources slide again. Charlene's going to send out all the slides. IBI is will model for PACE transactions for HUD nationwide. Yeah, you could say that. We'd like to see Texas as a model. Curious where you fit PACE, HUD and PACE. It seemed to be a new construction. I think actually PACE's sweet spot would be with a 223F, to be honest with you, not new construction, for all the reasons that we heard from commenters like Mike Bazance and Bruce Minchie and others.
Yep, the sweet spot is probably going to be in HUD and FHA properties that have built up equity.
Good
And
point.
so you can plug in PACE within the debt ratios that HUD requires.
And I think that gets to Adam's question as well. Scott, criterion 3 and 223F. Does the reduced underwriting NOA and criterion 5 affect the market value appraiser? I'm going to defer that to a lender, Scott. Sorry. For new construction, what is the equity requirement? I'll defer that to a HUD lender. Look, I almost got to the bottom. Thanks, Bob. I knew that was you, Bruce. PACE can be used for tax exempt properties as far as HUD is concerned, but I'll defer that to Charlene for TPA. HUD and PACE payments combined for the debt service tax.
Sorry, we're very pleased to serve nonprofit owners, and we have quite a few great nonprofit projects already. Sorry.
And I'm gonna jump now. Thanks all. Thanks Charlene. Thanks Dub and Mayor Dye and Bryce. Any follow-up questions? Please either email me, or I said to Charlene, if we need to do a follow-up session, I'm happy to participate. But I gotta jump, and I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. And we got through all the questions, Charlene. So I'm going to leave.
I'm impressed. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, as you can tell from Bob's presentation, we all have a lot to learn, and there is a great opportunity to work together and to work collaboratively to figure all of this out. And we can't do it without you. So thank you for sharing your time today. You are going to get all the slides, including all the links and Bob's information on the programs and the lenders. So we look forward to working with all of you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you, Mayor Dye. Thank you, Bryce. Thank you, Doug.